Welcome to week 4 of the workshop. My name is Ryan. I'm an alcoholic. We could just have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer, and then we'll get right into this today. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. All right. If you weren't here last time, we left off on the promises, the 9-step promises on the bottom of page 83. So we'll pick up there today. Just to give you guys a heads up of what I'm going to cover today. Obviously, there's 5 more chapters to go in this book, and I'm not going to get through all 5 chapters today. I'm going to be mostly working out of chapter 7. And in your packet, there's some instructions at the bottom, and it's the last 4 chapters. I basically take what I've been learning in the first 7 chapters and I apply it to what those 4 chapters are going to tell me to do. I'll pick some stuff out of there, but there's a lot to cover in there, but some amazing stuff in those last 4 chapters, and it's all about practicing the principles in all my affairs. So I take what I've learned in here and apply it to my life out in the world and see the magic happen. But anyway, we'll pick up on page 83. I'm going to read through the promises, and then we'll get right into steps 10, 11, and 12. All right. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. One thing I will say about those promises is consider this. Without the 12th one, the last one, the first 11 are not going to happen for me. And so that's really the main promise in all 12 of those, is I start to realize at this point in the work that God is doing for me what I could not do for myself. I don't make amends on my own. I don't look at my resentments on my own. I can't get over my fears on my own. I have problems in relationships on my own. All these other promises that it's telling me, economic insecurity, selfishness, all these things are self-manifested problems, and without God's help, none of that's going to change for me. So really, the 12th promise there is what it's all about. And then steps 10 and 11, as we're getting into it today, is how I'm going to further unlock that connection and not just maintain it, but grow it with my higher power, the God of my understanding. Before I get into what the book today, I'm going to talk to you a couple things about my personal experience with these next 2 steps specifically. For anyone that's been around here for a little while, if you feel like there's something missing, or maybe I'm not as connected as I once was, I strenuously suggest, if you're not doing everything from page 84 to 88 in the big book on a daily basis, as the book suggests to do, start doing it. And my experience with that is really simple. I told you guys when we first started the workshop on day 30, I thought about committing suicide in Alcoholics Anonymous. Wasn't working the program, was just coming to meetings, trying not to drink and show up here, and I found out that was not what AA was all about. What I didn't tell you about that day was there was another gentleman, younger than me. He picked up a 30 chip on the same day. Him and I would come to meetings every single day together. On day 31, God sent me back to AA, and I got a sponsor and worked the steps. On day 31, Tim was not there. And on day 37 or so for me, Tim's parents showed up at the meeting, crying. So you can fill in the blank of what happened to Tim on day 31. All it took was one time for him to go back out, and he never came back again. The same thing happened to me 6 months later with someone really close to me. I was making amends to her, and she went out one time, and she did not come back. So twice in my first year of sobriety, I lost somebody that I was close with, either in the program or somebody that I was close with for a long time in my life. And it only took one time, one day, for them to go out. They were practicing the program. They were going to meetings. They were here. And one day, and they were not here ever again. I learned really quickly in Alcoholics Anonymous how serious this is. And this book talks about urgency, and we're going to get it here again in the 10th step. I may not have tomorrow. It's going to suggest I have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. So I better be doing that today, or you might not see me tomorrow. And that's kind of the message I want to lead into steps 10, 11, and 12 about. So are these extravagant promises. We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if I work for them. What I like to say to that sentence is, they will not if I don't. So if I don't continue to do the work, those promises, will not continue to materialize. And that's been my experience over and over again in this room. This brings us to step 10. Step 10 is only 2 pages in the book, but I am going to outline a lot of stuff here today about step 10. And there's some stuff in your packet if you want to follow along with that. But step 10, which suggests I continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as I go along. So I vigorously commenced this way of living as I cleaned up the past. So what that means is, as soon as I start making amends, as soon as I start making the first one, I'm in step 10, right? I'm in step 10. That's what that just said. As soon as I start cleaning up the past, I vigorously commence this new way of living, which is steps 10, 11, and 12. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I had a long list of amends, and I still make mistakes. So if I'm not continuing to set right new wrongs, that list of amends that I had is going to continue to grow, and I'm never going to get caught up with it. So I desperately need step 10 while I'm trying to complete my 9th step amends. And that's what the big book just suggested. Now we get a powerful sentence. Also, that word vigorously, that's another one of those words of urgency, right? Vigorously doesn't mean mess around. Vigorously means very thoroughly, very seriously, right? With vigor. So I've entered the world of the Spirit is this next sentence. And I mentioned this before, but someone suggested to me once that there's 2 fellowships going on in Alcoholics Anonymous. The one that everybody's in, right? The spirit of the fellowship, which is I walk in, I feel that brotherly love, that camaraderie, that unity that's in any meeting you could walk into, hopefully. Then there's a second fellowship, and that's for the ones who have entered this world of the Spirit, who have done the work in the big book, who have a connection with the God of their understanding, who are living on a spiritual basis. That's what entering the world of the Spirit is. I'm living on a spiritual basis, and it tells me I get there after I complete the first 9 steps of this program. So it's a beautiful thing. How do I stay there, right? And this is what step 10, 11, and 12 are going to be all about. My next function, and here's a big word, is to grow, right? A lot of people are going to associate step 10 with maintenance, and there is a maintenance word on the next page, but it's going to tell me right here, my next function, your next function, Ryan, is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Understanding and effectiveness of what? How about God's will for me and the power to carry that out? How about living in the world of the Spirit? How about living by spiritual principles, right? All of those can apply here. So then we get an instruction about time, which is rare for the book, like a specific instruction about time. The big book never really says anywhere I need to have X amount of time to do anything. And I mentioned that when we were talking about the 4th step and some other things along the way. Those are just opinions that have happened over the course of time. There's nowhere in the big book that says I need to have X amount of time to do anything. But there is an instruction about time here, and this is a big one. It should continue for my lifetime, right? Not just once when I do it with my sponsor, not when I feel like it. Lifetime is every day. Lifetime's infinite, one day at a time. So now I get the 10-step exercises, and there's 4 of them. They come here pretty quickly in the next couple sentences. And there's 4 big words and 4 exercises for each of the 4 words. So the 4 words, and these are going to carry between steps 10 and 11. So these are big ones, and they're not going to be surprising. It says I continue to watch. So watch would be the first spiritual exercise of the 10th step. Watch means I look out for, right? I'm on the lookout for. I've done a list in step 4. I've learned about my grosser handicaps. I know what my character defects are, right? My job now is to watch for those on a daily basis, and the big book's going to give me 4 major ones specifically, right? I continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So I'm on the lookout for those every day, right? First spiritual exercise of the 10th step. Like I said, there's going to be 4. As I watch for these things, the next thing I'm going to do, and this shouldn't be a surprise either, because I've mentioned this, the book's going to use this idea over and over and over again, especially in these next 5 pages. You're going to see these 3 words a lot. And they are, when these crop up, I ask God. That's the second spiritual exercise, right? Ask. I ask God at once to remove them. So I see these character defects. I have a recipe. I said 6 and 7 would come to life in the 10th step. So step 6 is I'm on the lookout for these defects. I'm recognizing that they're there. Step 7, I have a prayer to ask God to help me remove them, right? So that's where I apply the 7th step right here. I ask God, right? God, please, my creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Pray that you now remove from me every single defective character. I could say that for one specific defective character too, as needed on a day-to-day basis. So I watch. I ask for selfishness. I watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I ask God to remove those 4 things. Then the next thing is a 5th step practice, come into life in the 10th step, right? I discuss them with someone immediately. That's what I do in the 5th step, right? With my sponsor or with another spiritual advisor or someone that's close to me in the program or a therapist, something like that. I discuss these problems that I'm watching and I'm seeing happen in my life with someone and listen to this instruction, not when I feel like it, immediately, right? I'm keeping my side of the street clean, or at least that's what I'm trying to do with the 10th step. So, watch, ask, discuss, and then the 4th one is the continuation of the 9th step, and it's kind of what's written on the wall in the 10th step. I make amends. Listen to this language again, quickly. Not wait around, not let 20 years go by, and then I'll make my amends again. I make amends quickly if I've harmed anyone. So, watch, ask, discuss, make amends. That's how I practice the 10th step. Those are the spiritual exercises that the Big Book is asking me to do on a daily basis. Now, I'm going to say this because there is some confusion about 10 and 11 and when I should be doing this, and there's stuff that's said in the 12 and 12, and there's stuff that's said in the Big Book. So the Big Book is going to outline a path where step 10 is meant to be done all throughout the day. It is not the nightly review. It is a spot check inventory through the day, right? Immediately, right? It says quickly, right? So that's not even wait until the end of the day. Immediately means now, which means I'm watching for this stuff now, and I'm taking action on it immediately. So I practice the 10th step all throughout the day. I'm constantly on the lookout for these things. A suggestion based on experience with this, using these 4 spiritual exercises and the 4 words, start with 1. Right? Start to just watch for selfishness. If you're new to this and you haven't done it before or you haven't done it in a really long time, this is a lot to kind of try to do all at once. But I can build up to it. If I just watch for selfishness, take a week, whatever. Try to watch for selfishness and see how much it comes up. Then I can ask God to remove it. I can make amends around my selfishness if it's there. I can talk to somebody about it, see if I can make some changes, and then I move on to dishonesty, then I move on to resentment, then I move on to fear, right? And I work with these spiritual exercises individually. I've had some success using note cards. I write one of them down on a note card and just put it in my car, so it's just there, and I'm just seeing it all the time, right? Ryan, you're watching for selfishness today. Like today, you've got to do it. So it can be done in pieces and build up to this routine. Obviously, if I have no routine at all, anything is better than nothing, and I can build up to this. But the book is going to ask me to do all this. And what I found is then it becomes kind of more of a natural thing for me, becomes more second nature if I start to do this every day. And so now I'm constantly on the lookout for these things. And I could add some other character defects to this list, right? The book gives me 4, but I could certainly add some of those that were on my 6-step list for sure, especially if I see them coming up in my life. I'll touch more on that idea in a little bit. All right. Then it gives me this interesting instruction. It says, then I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. So, if I'm stuck in self, and I'm dealing with these character defects of mine, the Big Book just told me, and it's told me this once before in the 4th step, and there's going to be a whole step about it, step 12. It tells me to turn my thoughts to someone I can help, right? Get out of self, go help someone else, Ryan. So if I'm really struggling with this, go help someone else. Love and tolerance of others is my code. I don't know about any of you, but on my own, love and tolerance has never been my code. Not together at the same time. So my love and tolerance becomes my code if I practice this 10th step and all the other spiritual exercises and steps before that on a day-to-day basis. If I practice these steps on a day-to-day basis, love and tolerance will slowly become my code. And it may not be that way every single day, but I've found it to be achievable some of the time if I do this. If I don't, you're not going to get a lot of love and tolerance from me. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. I'm not capable of that on my own. With God's help and spiritual principles, I've had some success. Now, a whole paragraph of 10-step promises.
rarely talked about, because we always talk about the 9-step promises, but this is an opinion. I find these to be more powerful, personally. And these are really good reasons why I should practice the 10-step. If any of you are on my daily message list, which there's some people in the room that are, and anybody that's not, if you want to be, just text me. I send out a message every day based around the daily reflections, and it's just my thoughts, and it's something I've been doing for a while. So if you're interested in that, message me, and I'm happy to add you to my list. But the 10 step's been coming up a lot lately. 10 step, 10 tradition. So part of what I'm going to say is what I said this morning about the daily reflection. And the strongest promises in this book are the ones that come in the form of warnings. So I'm going to get some really cool stuff here in this paragraph, but then at the end of the paragraph, I'm going to get some really, really strong warnings. So pay attention to those specifically. I'm going to go through these promises. So I've ceased fighting anything and anyone, even alcohol. That's nice. That makes life a lot simpler, right? That might be how I achieve some peace and serenity from the 9-step promises, right? If I practice the 10-step, I can continue to get that peace and serenity, and maybe I stop fighting anything and everyone, including alcohol. By this time, Sandy will have returned. That is a culmination of what the 2nd step was suggesting, right? 2nd step, I believe that God could restore me to sanity, right? A higher power could restore me to sanity. Well, the 10th step is where the book is telling me that's going to happen. Sanity will return. I will seldom be interested in liquor. That's pretty cool. If tempted, I recoil from it as from a hot flame. Now that's the culmination of the metaphor that started in the 1st step, right? I can't keep my hand off the stove. Alcohol keeps burning me, but I keep putting my hand on the stove over and over and over again. Now, if I practice the 10th step and I have this spiritual, living on this world of the spirit, I recoil from that stove, just like I would if it was an actual hot stove and not the metaphor. So now I recoil from alcohol as if it were a hot flame. It's not going to burn me anymore if I stay in this. I react sanely and normally, and I will find that this has happened automatically. So that's the coolest part of all. I'm not doing anything. God's doing for me what I can't do for myself, right? I will see that my new attitude towards liquor has been given without any thought or effort on my part, so it doubles down on that idea. It just comes, it triples down on that idea. That is the miracle of it. Quadruples down on that idea, right? This is the miracle, right? All of a sudden, my problems that I had before are not my problems anymore. And if I continue to practice this one day at a time, it'll stay that way. I'm not fighting it. Neither am I avoiding temptation. So that means I don't need to live in fear of alcohol, right? I can go to the grocery store and walk near the alcohol aisle and not have a panic attack about it. That's a really interesting way to live. And for me personally, this book is all about moving from fear to faith, faith in a higher power to do for me what I can't do for myself. So I don't have to fight it or avoid temptation. Now, I'm not just going to go willingly sit at some dungeon dive bar for 12 hours and pretend like that's a good idea for me. But I'm not afraid to go somewhere if I have a legitimate reason for being there. And we're going to read about that in the 12th step today. I feel as though I've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Anybody ever heard the term emotional sobriety? That is emotional sobriety. I'm in a position of neutrality, so I'm not too high. I'm not too low. Right? I'm safe and protected. I'm living life on a much more even keel. It's not the best or worst day ever. I have a lot of really normal days. That's a beautiful thing. My sponsor used to say to me all the time, he's like, Ryan, I'm in the constant pursuit of okay. And I said, okay? and he said, that way, if somebody asks me if I want a drink or a drug today, I'll say, no, I'm okay. Position of neutrality, right? Safe and protected. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist, right? God has removed it. My spiritual connection with my higher power and the work that I've done so far has removed this obsession that was once having me hopelessly defeated. It does not exist. Now we get some interesting promises that are in the form of warnings, right? I'm neither cocky nor am I afraid. So that's a warning, right? Don't get too sure of yourself, Ryan. Like, there's still some work that needs to be done. And fear it's one of the 4 buzzwords to look for. But if I'm afraid and I'm living in fear, it's very dangerous. And there's a lot of ways that can look. Like I said, not being scared to go to the grocery store and go near the liquor aisle, that to me, that indicates a problem. And I think that's what the big book just said as well. Right? I'm not supposed to be living in fear anymore. That is my experience. That is my experience. Now, the big warning, right? That is how I react so long as I keep in fit spiritual condition. So that is a big one. I need to maintain this spiritual condition. I need to continue to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And it's going to tell me, it is easy, Ryan. Here's the easiest thing that's ever going to happen for you, bud. It is easy to let up on this spiritual program of action and rest on my laurels. I am headed for trouble if I do. Alcohol is a subtle foe. So is my self-will, quite frankly. Now, I gave you an example of what motivated me to do this in the first place, which I watched two people that I cared about die, right? And I was ready to die. So that was like the trifecta all at once. I rested on my laurels after about a year of sobriety, and I messaged a lot of people this today, right? I like to share with you the mistakes that I've made so that others don't have to make the same ones. Life got really, really good for me. I worked the steps quickly. I was sponsoring people 60 to 90 days in this program. I finished almost all of my amends within the first 9 months of my sobriety. I had service commitments. I was on boards. I was on committees. I was doing this even during the pandemic. It was awesome, and my life got really good. I got a job. I got a great career. I had my own place. Like all these things that I didn't have when I got here, I was getting, and all happened in the first year. Life got really good. And to me, my experience, that's when it's really easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. Not when things are going bad. It's when life gets really good. That's when I got to be the most careful. So I was able to kind of skate by for a couple years after that. I was still around the program, but I was not really doing steps 10 and 11, and I'll go into more detail about that. And then something happened. A month before my 3-year anniversary, I got a call in the middle of the night, and it was about my father. And he had been in a horrible accident at work. 3 weeks later, he succumbed to the injuries from that accident, and he passed away suddenly and left me to take care of my grandmother, who had fallen and broken her leg during that 3-week period as well, while there was no one there to help her at home. So I was taking care of my grandmother. My dad passed away. My job, that was kind of my focus in life. I put that above everything else for a little while. All of that came to a head at once. And I found out what headed for trouble if I do is really all about. I needed steps 10 and 11 desperately at that time, and I didn't have it. And I didn't really think about picking up a drink, but I thought about sitting in my room and feeling sorry for myself for a really long time. I thought about life doesn't really feel like feel that great about living anymore. And I thought about some dark things. So, the spiritual program of action, I'm headed for trouble if I do, right? I need to be really careful with that because I'm not sure when trouble's going to come. And if I'm not doing this on a day-to-day basis, it could easily be tomorrow. Like I said, I got a call in the middle of the night. I had just got a promotion at work the day before. Life was really good. And then life was not really good. And when I needed this, I wasn't practicing it the way that I do now. So I will tell you, since that happened, I haven't taken a day off in the last 3 years from doing this on a day-to-day basis, 10 and 11. And it's been transformational. And no matter what happens in my life today, I know that I'm going to be in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Like, sure, I have bad days. I have good days too. But nothing throws me off course like that did. And that was the lesson I had to learn the hard way. I'm not cured of alcoholism, right? So that's another warning. I'm not cured. Recovered doesn't mean cured, right? It's like being in remission. Like, I'm going to stay there if I continue to take care of myself. But if I am in remission and I start to go back to smoking, chances are I'm going to get that lung cancer back pretty fast. But, if I take care of myself, I might have a better shot. Same thing with my spiritual condition. If I don't maintain it, if I don't continue to grow, I'm not cured of anything. That recovered piece could disappear really fast for me. What I really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Powerful sentence there, right? That's a strong warning as well. All I have is today. And then a beautiful sentence that leads me into a 10-step prayer. Every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. So if I'm practicing this step as I go through the day, that's my best chance to possibly do that. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Those 4 words specifically, thy will be done, are going to be brought up in the 11th step as well. But that's a beautiful little prayer. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must, there's one of those must, go with me constantly, so all the time. I can exercise my willpower along this line all I wish. It's the proper use of the will. Now, I want to explain that because it's very confusing to a lot of people, because this book has been about getting out of self-will. Notice how it didn't say exercise my self-will. It said exercise my willpower along these lines. So God is going to provide for me some instructions. God is going to provide for me some inspiration. I am going to need my willpower to take that action, right? My self-will might tell me to go a different direction, but if I use my willpower along the lines that my higher power has laid out for me and the spiritual principles in this book have laid out for me, that's a beautiful thing. It says that's the proper use of the will, Ryan. Like, sure, I'm going to need to take some action around here. You know, if you read anything online, I think we, as humans, adult humans, we make about 35,000 conscious decisions every single day. The more of those I can align with God's will, the better off I'm doing. I've never got to all 35,000 yet. I got a long way to go. But I certainly have a lot more that are with God's direction than what I was doing before. And that's a nice little recipe. The book says that's the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about, listen to these three words, receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him, God, who has all knowledge and power. So that's a really good question to ask myself on a day-to-day basis. It's a nice little spot check of spiritual fitness. Do I feel like I'm receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from my higher power today? And if the answer is no, well, that's a pretty clear sign that I might have some work to do, right? It's a pretty clear sign that I might want to double down on my spiritual course of action today. So, strength, inspiration, direction, those are promises. But it's also a good way for me to check in. If I've carefully followed directions, so what are the directions? It's everything in the book. Those are the directions. So if I've carefully followed these directions, I've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into me. So if I'm not feeling that strength, inspiration, direction, what do? I go back to the book, and I go through it, and I say, okay, well, which part am I not doing? Like I said, at 3 years, God slapped me over the head so hard, like I would have had to have been in a coma not to feel it, right? And what He did was, He's like, Ryan, 10 and 11, when's the last time you did that? When's the last time you committed to 10 and 11 consistently on a day-to-day basis, right? And the answer was, it had been a long time. Couldn't even tell you how long it was. As soon as I started to do that, I started to get out of that room. I didn't want to leave, right? Imagine that. To some extent, I become God-conscious. I've begun to develop this vital sixth sense. So earlier in the book, it says I'll be rocketed into the fourth dimension, which is the world of the spirit, right? And now I've entered that world of the spirit. I have 5 senses, physical senses in this world. The sixth sense would be God consciousness, right? So it just told me I'm getting a sixth sense. So I get a fourth dimension and a sixth sense. How cool is that? That's a new way of living. I must go further, and that means more action. So a lot of stuff in those couple pages with the 10th step, right? And as I had mentioned, the idea is for this to be used throughout the day, and it's meant to be used in congruence with this next step and the 11th step. And I'm actually going to take us through the 11th step at the beginning of the day and work our way backwards, because the book is actually going to talk about what to do at night first. I'm going to start with what to do in the beginning, so I can take you through a whole day cycle of what this book is telling me to do on a day-to-day basis. But first, it's going to tell me something really important. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. I shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. So I feel like that says pray a lot, Ryan. Like you might need to do it, even when you don't want to. Like, don't be shy. Listen to this. Better men than you, Ryan, bless you. Better men than you, Ryan, are using it constantly. Yeah, that's an ego-deflating idea, right? Better men than me are using this all the time, so maybe I should too. It works if I have the proper attitude. And if you want to highlight that word, I mentioned it before when we were in the second step. The big book defines the proper attitude, and it's on page 55. If you weren't here for the second week, I will just quickly read the proper attitude from page 55. It is the second to last paragraph on the page, and it starts with, I can only clear the ground a bit if my testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables me to think honestly, encourages me to search diligently within myself. Then if I wish, I can join you on the broad highway. With this attitude, I cannot fail. So if I take that attitude into prayer every single day, the proper attitude into my 11th step, the big book tells me I'm not going to fail. Sweep away prejudice, think honestly, search diligently. Those are the 3 ideas to take into prayer every single day. And it's something that, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm going to tell you guys things I do every single day. I do everything on 84 to 88 every single day. I read every single line on all 5 of those pages every single day. And I go back to that proper attitude and I refresh myself about what that is every single day. Because God could and would if He were sought. And the book says if I take that attitude into prayer, I cannot fail. So it's a pretty cool deal. And I've enjoyed working with that. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. So the definite and valuable suggestions about prayer specifically are what it said on page 55. There's been some other ones throughout the book, but that's a really strong one. Now, as I mentioned, I am going to skip this next paragraph. This is the nightly review, by the way. There's some controversy about that, and I don't think it really matters what number I put to the step. It just matters like if I'm doing it and I'm doing what the book says. You call it whatever number you want, I suppose. But it says I got to step 11 on page 85, and then it gives me a nightly review on 86. So that tells me it's an 11-step nightly review, meant to be used with the beginning part of the day, which we're going to talk about, and that 10th step. If I use all three of these things together, what I have is a 24-hour cycle that keeps me current, keeps me in today. I'm not bringing as many problems from yesterday into today if I do this, right? So I'm going to skip this paragraph, and we'll come back to it at the end. And we're going to start with on awakening. Again, like I said, stuff I read every single day. I actually go to a meeting in this room at 6:30 where we practice the 11th step, and this is part of our reading in here. On awakening, and someone pointed out to me, he said, Ryan, it doesn't say on awakening when you feel like it. It doesn't say on awakening on Tuesdays. It doesn't say on awakening on the weekends. It doesn't say on awakening when you have time. It says on awakening every day. Let me think about the 24 hours ahead. That's an interesting idea. Put some thought into what's coming for me for the day, right? It's not always a horrible idea to have a plan. I consider my plans for the day, right? So it's telling me to have a plan too, right? Oh, but before I do that, before I go out to start to execute these plans, I'm going to do something, and it's going to give me quite a bit to do, actually. It says I ask God to direct my thinking. So before I finalize any of these plans, and as I'm thinking about this 24-hour period ahead, the first and most important thing I do is ask God to direct my thinking, right? And it gives me something specific to ask for, especially asking that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives, right? Tell the truth, don't feel sorry for myself, and get out of self, right? I gotta think about this. And I ask God for help with this every single day. And it tells me under these conditions, I can employ my mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave me a brain to use. So I'm going to have to do some thinking on my own. But if I ask God to put me in the right mindset to start with, I have a much better chance of that thinking being productive instead of destructive. And one thing I will tell you that I do here, and this is just me personally, this is not what the book says, but I told you I was going to tell you everything that I do. What I do is I pause here and I go read 60 to 63 from the first requirement through the third step prayer, and I do this every day. And the reason that I do is because it tells me I need to get out of self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives, and those pages in the third step, that's what it's all about. Selfishness and self-centeredness, the root of my troubles. It tells me, it's a really great reminder daily of exactly what my life's going to look like on self-will. So I just happen to do that here before I continue on with this 11-step practice. It says my thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when my thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So it just told me what all the wrong motives are, so I need to stay out of those. In thinking about my day, right, when I'm considering these plans, right, or thinking about the 24 hours ahead, it's telling me I may face indecision. I may not be able to determine which course to take, right? So I can go here or I can go there, right? Happens a lot, right? I got a busy life. I got things I got to do. What should I do? Here's an idea. Those three magical words. I ask God for inspiration, not just decide I'm going to do this because that's what I feel like doing. I ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. I love this next instruction. I relax and take it easy. The big book is preparing me to go into meditation. It's going to come up after the next paragraph. So it's telling me to ask God for inspiration, relax and take it easy, Ryan. Prayer, meditation. Let's get in the right mindset to start the day. Let's not start in a panic. I don't struggle. If I practice this enough, I find that those two things come true. I find that I'm able to take it easy and I'm able to not struggle. One really good suggestion for this is make some time to do it. You know, everyone's like, I don't have time. And they said, okay, the big book's going to tell me later on that anything I'm putting above God and spiritual principles, I better be willing to lose. So do I have time now? right? Whatever I don't have time to do this for, like I got to get to work, got to do this, got to do that. I'm basically saying I'm willing to lose all that anyway if I'm not willing to just take a few extra minutes. I encourage people, like, set your alarm 10 minutes earlier. Get up 15 minutes earlier. I'm not asking you to get up at 2 in the morning if you're getting up at 7. Get up at 6:45. Take some time to do this spiritual exercise, right? It says, I'm often surprised how the right answers come after I've tried this for a while. So it just told me I might need to practice this for a little while before the real answers start to come. And that's what I love when, like, a sponsee comes to me and says, oh, I've been doing this and I'm just not getting anything. And I said, well, how long have you been practicing for? Oh, 3 days. And I said, okay, how about we go for a week, 2 weeks? Right? Let's practice this for a little while before we say it doesn't work, right? That's just that alcoholic mentality of, like, I need it now, and if it's not working, then I got to go back to my way, which I've already admitted my way doesn't work. So it tells me if I practice this for a while, I'm going to get some cool stuff here on this next page, and then it's going to lead me into meditation. It says what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. So that's that God consciousness that the 10th step was talking about, right? If I'm not feeling that strength, inspiration, and direction, maybe I need to double down on my 11th step efforts in the morning. And I might start to see that. Being still in experience and having just made conscious contact with God, that's everybody when I start the program, right? If I'm start working this 11th step for the first time, everybody is in experience with the 11th step when they start working it for the first time, whether they have faith or not, right? And I'm just making this new conscious contact with God. I might have brought one in here, but the idea is in the steps, I'm making a new connection with God. So all of this is new. All of this is inexperienced for me. So I need to practice it. I'm new at this. It is not probable that I'm going to be inspired at all times. So as I'm learning to do this, don't freak out. Like, some things are not going to make sense, and that's okay. Big Book's trying to get me to be calm and just say, keep practicing this, Ryan. I might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. So the most absurd action and idea of all is what I've already discovered in the first 9 steps is go back to doing things my way. How's that been working out? I don't have time to do this. I'm not getting what I want from it. I've been practicing it for 38 hours and it's not working. And so I'm going to go back to the insanity that I practiced for 30 years that drove me to suicide. I mean, that is what I'm up against here. I'm up against myself with this. And I really just have to put things in perspective sometime and say, okay, maybe I'll give this a little more time. Nevertheless, I find that my thinking will, as time passes, continue to practice it, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. And then I come to rely upon it. After I practice it for a while, and it becomes this like normal routine for me. I go into prayer and meditation in the morning now, and I'm not worried about a thing. It wasn't always that way, but after doing this every day, especially over the last 3 years, every single day, I've come to rely upon what this does for me every single day, and the results are undeniable. Not every day's perfect, and I still screw things up, but man, I'm a lot more calm and at peace and at ease. My problems are minor in comparison to what they were, and it's all as a direct result of doing this. Now, it tells me I usually conclude the period of meditation as the beginning of the next sentence. So what does that mean? That means before that sentence, a period of meditation, right? The 11th step says sought through prayer and meditation. Here's the meditation part. So it says I conclude the period of meditation, so I should have had a period of meditation. It doesn't tell me how long, right? Start small. If you're not doing it at all, meditation, try 2 minutes. Try 5 minutes. I currently do 10 to 15 every day. Just what I do now. I've done less, I've done more. I'm at 10 to 15 minutes, right? That's where I'm at. I do a 10 to 15 minute period of meditation. Right there after that sentence, I come to rely upon it. And then when I conclude that period of meditation, I conclude it with this prayer. The Big Book has a lot of prayers on these pages, right? It tells me to ask God for inspiration. It tells me to ask Him to help me to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Now it's going to say, Ryan, here's a prayer for you. Be shown through the day. So God, please show me throughout the day what my next step is to be. Please give me whatever I need to take care of such problems. I especially ask especially for freedom from self-will, right? And I'm careful with this one. I make no request for myself only, right? So that would have been a selfish prayer. So some more direct instructions. I have that period of meditation. I exit the period of meditation. Hopefully I'm in a nice mindset. God, please show me what my next step is to be. Please help me take care of whatever such problems I have, because that's life. Life is problems. It happens all the time. And then I make no request for myself only, right? Then it tells me I may ask for myself if others will be helped. So a really good example I've heard of that over the years is praying for God to put somebody in my path that I can help today. That's asking for something for myself that's really in the pursuit of trying to help somebody else. God, please put somebody in my path that I can help today. Please show me who you would have me help today. Obviously, I don't need to go over the selfish prayers. I'm sure a lot of people have been making those for a really long time, right? I need this. I want that. God, do this for me, and then I'll be okay, right? Please get me out of this one. It's like that's what that looks like. I'm careful never to pray for my own selfish ends. Ask yourself if this is you any time in your life. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. Selfish prayers. A lot of us have wasted a lot of time doing that. I certainly did for a really long time, and it didn't work, and now I can easily see why. God was trying to show me that there's more in this world than just me, turns out. A lot of people, actually. Now, a very interesting paragraph here, and that meeting that I go to in the morning, coincidentally or not coincidentally, this is the only paragraph that they don't read out of these pages, and I can have your opinions why, but there is some interesting stuff in this paragraph that might make some people uncomfortable. But it is an instruction in the big book, so let's see what it says. If circumstances warrant, I ask my wife or friend to join me in a morning meditation. How I ended up in that meeting in the first place was when I was practicing those 10th and 11th steps. I realized I didn't really have anybody to do it with, so I sought out a meeting that did prayer and meditation in the 11th step in the morning, and I ended up here at 6:30 to meditate with some friends of mine and go through some prayers with some friends of mine, as the big book suggested. That's why I go to that meeting. If I belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. So there you go. If your religion has you do some prayers or some devotionals in the morning, here you go. Now's the time. What I suggest with all that other stuff, and it's going to bring in some more here, is it's a really simple concept. The big book's going to tell me to add, right? So I will do anything in addition to the big book, but I'm not going to replace this with anything. So it doesn't say go do your prayers and devotions and forget about everything else that this book is telling me to do. This is my instruction manual as an alcoholic. I might have a different instruction manual as a Christian or a Muslim. I might have a different instruction manual as a parent or whatever, right? All that other stuff. This I need to do to treat my alcoholism on a day-to-day basis, right? So I'm going to add this stuff. I'm not going to replace the big book with another bigger book or whatever you might hear, right? Use it. It's beautiful. There's wonderful instructions and all kinds. There's amazing literature out there. Use it. Be really careful replacing this with something else, though. Seen that go wrong a lot. If I'm not a member of a religious body, I sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles I've been discussing. So this is where I bring in a lot of the prayers from earlier in the book. Third step prayer, 7th step prayer. There's some other prayers that emphasize the principles we've been discussing. You can add some other prayers in, whatever you need to do there. Now, this is very interesting. There are many helpful books. I struggled with meditation. And so someone suggested to me, Ryan, why don't you read some books about meditation from people who practice meditation for a living or people that have been doing it for centuries. I have one in my bag right here, actually. I'm not going to get it out, but I've been reading it for the last year. It's got 365 daily meditations on Taoism. And I've been reading that for the last year as another book to give me some further instructions on meditation. Some of it's pretty wild. I'm not sure I understand all of it, quite frankly, but there's been some wonderful instructions in there. And the really cool part is a lot of stuff in that little book that I've been reading for the last year. It re-emphasizes a lot of stuff that's in this book. So that's pretty cool. It doubles down and it reaffirms what I'm doing. All right. Suggestions about these helpful books. This is the part where people get a little scared, right? Fear is really the word I would use for this one. Suggestions about these books that I might find help in may be obtained from my priest, minister, or rabbi. Now, be quick to see where religious people are right, not wrong, right, and make use of what they offer, right? Again, what are people that are practicing different faiths and religions and that's their life? Their life is about prayer and meditation. Their life is about trusting God. Their life is about believing in whatever God they believe in. So whether I believe in the same God as them or not, or whatever, I need to be able to, that instruction on 55 about the right attitude to take into prayer, set aside your prejudice, Ryan, even against organized religion, and see where these people are right, not focus on all the things that I think they're doing wrong, right? And we're allowed to have opinions. We're human. That's fine. But maybe I can see where some of these people are right, and I can make use of what they offer. If I'm looking to go to the next level in my prayer and meditation, or if I'm really struggling with it, maybe seek some people out who have been doing this their entire life, who love doing it, who show others how to do it. The Big Book just told me to really consider that. And again, this is the paragraph that kind of gets left out in the 11th step, and it's pretty obvious why. But if I'm doing what everything else in the Big Book says, a big instruction is set aside prejudice, even against organized religion. And it puts it to the test here. Ryan, are you willing to go out and see where these religious people are right today and make use of what they offer? It's a valid question. Some days yes, some days no. As I go through the day, I pause when agitated or doubtful. That's a very powerful 11th step instruction. Pause is a big one. I pause when agitated or doubtful, and I ask. There's that magic word again, prayer, right? I ask for the right thought or action. So if I find myself agitated or in doubt about what's going on throughout the day, instead of just reacting emotionally and irrationally, I'm going to pause. God, please show me what you would have me do. Thy will be done. I constantly remind myself I'm no longer running the show. So that's that actor playing the director. That was from the 3rd step, right? God's the director now, so I'm not running the show. I'm here to play the role he assigns. And I humbly say to myself many times each day. It's a powerful instruction. Many times each day means many times. Not just once. Right? Many times each day. Use these 4 magical words, and then it's going to tell me 9 spiritual benefits I get if I do it. So, thy will be done. Many times each day. And then listen to these spiritual benefits I get if I do this 11-step practice throughout the day. I'm in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, foolish decisions. I become much more efficient. I do not tire so easily because I'm not burning up energy foolishly. And I'm not burning up energy foolishly as I did when I was trying to arrange life to suit myself. It works. It really does. Thy will be done. I get 9 spiritual benefits. Thy will be done many times each day. Look at that list, too. Some of that stuff's the stuff I'm supposed to be on the lookout for in the first place. And some of it's some additions to that, right? How about the one about I don't tire so easily? How cool is that? If I'm not burning up all this energy trying to, grind away on my own self-will and I'm just saying thy will be done, the Big Book tells me you might not be so tired. That's pretty cool. In addition to all this other stuff, it works, it really does. Simplicity. It works. I just need to do it. It will not work if I don't do it. So if I'm saying, I'm not getting what I need out of this, and I can honestly say I'm going through 84 to 88 every single day, and I'm doing everything that it's asking me to do, I've never met somebody that's actually done that, and they're not getting any results from it, especially if they practice it for a while. It works. It really does. The only issue with the steps is the person doing them. The book works. It works. And it's operator error. It's not the tool. It's the carpenter. Okay, and I really need to stay in touch with that. It says we alcoholics are undisciplined. For me, that's the understatement of the century, right? I'm extremely undisciplined on my own. I get so far off in just insanity. So I let God discipline me in this simple way. So that it just outlined. So what did it just outline? Daily disciplines for God to discipline this undisciplined alcoholic every single day. Right? If I'm struggling, go to 84 to 88. Figure out which part I'm not doing. Start doing it. See what happens. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead, and we've already had that a few times in the book. And like I said, if anyone doesn't remember, go back to Bill's story, page 14, 15, and he gives the definition of what faith without works is dead. He gives a beautiful definition of what that looks like. I've already read it a couple times, so I'm not going to read it again in the interest of time, but it does tell me what that is. And then it says the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, specifically the first half of step 12, but all of step 12 too. And this is actually a good time to take a break.
Can you go back to that first paragraph from Tired Night?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Patty. You're right. Yes. Thank you. We have one more paragraph, see? When I do things out of order, it gets wonky. Thank you, Patty. I apologize, but yeah. There is one, yeah, right, I gotta pause, and I gotta ask God for help. Woo! All right. So, I did promise we're going to do this. So, it just gave me the instructions for everything to do in the morning and kind of some stuff to do throughout the day. I have this 10-step that I'm doing throughout the day. So, in the morning, I'm getting in the right mindset. Throughout the day, I'm on the lookout for these 4 big buzzwords. Selfishness, honesty, resentment, and fear. Add some stuff to that, if you got them. All right? Then what do I do with all that? Is I get to the end of the day, and now I get this beautiful process of the nightly review. On page 86, it says, when I retire at night. So again, just like on Awakening, it doesn't say when I retire at night on Monday. It doesn't say when I retire at night when I feel like it. It doesn't say when I retire at night if I'm in a good mood. It says when I retire at night, every night. I constructively review my day. And it gives me a series of questions. The first one is directly related to what I should have been looking for in the 10-step all day. So, Ryan, as you did this work in the 10-step today, where were you resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? A good time for me to kind of review that one more time. The idea is try to cast it out. Ask God for help, right? I don't want to take these resentments and fears and my selfishness and my dishonesty into tomorrow. I'm trying to get rid of it today, ideally. Do I owe an apology? So is there an amends that I haven't made? It's kind of giving me a warning, right? Like I might want to do that. Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another person at once? So have I done that 10-step practice of discuss with someone immediately? Is there something that I'm hanging on to? Don't want one of those take it to the grave things from the 5th step to kind of creep in, and I'm just not going to talk to anybody about this because I'm a little ashamed of it. I've been sober for a while. I did something really stupid, and I don't want somebody to know about it. Ego, right? Be really careful with that. Was I kind and loving towards all? Over the years, I've turned that into a prayer, and I've just asked God to help me do that every day because that's tough. To be kind and loving towards all, I have had some days where I feel like I've done a pretty good job with that, but most days I need help, so I ask God for help with that on a day-to-day basis. What could I have done better? That's a pretty cool idea. So I have this 10-step practice I've done all day. I probably have some things that I didn't do so well. If I use the 4-step concept of like that chosen ideal and being willing to live up to this new ideal and what I have to look forward to and work towards, I ask God to help me mold a better ideal. What could I have done better, right? What could I do better tomorrow than I did today? Was I thinking of myself most of the time? So how selfish was I today? All right. Did I think about anyone else at all? I am my favorite topic, I found out, so I have to be really careful. I have to be really careful with that. Was I thinking of what I could do for others, what I could pack into the stream of life? So it's a really good question. Am I packing into the stream of life, or am I plucking things out of it? Am I adding to that stream and that flow of life, or am I the obstruction in it? It's an interesting idea to consider on a day-to-day basis. Then it gives me this really cool sentence, because this is the reminder, just like in the 4th step where it says if I fall short of the chosen ideal, right? I'm going to fall short. I'm going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean I'm going to drink. It doesn't mean that I failed. It means that I have work to do. And this sentence helps me, reminds me of that, right? I must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish my usefulness to others, right? So this is a constructive review, not pick up the bat and beat myself over the head about how horrible I am, right? That's not going to do anybody any good. The book's pretty clear about that. Like, sure, I review my mistakes, I ask God for help, and I realize that I'm going to continue to make them. Try to make less mistakes today than I did yesterday. Be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. This is how I do that. Now, after making my review, I ask God's forgiveness. How beautiful is that? Right? I screwed up again today. Please forgive me. I honestly and sincerely will try to do better tomorrow. And if I really mean that, and it's really true, God's going to show me what corrective measures should be taken, right? I ask him for what corrective measures should be taken. And then I do that, right? I go to bed. I wake up the next day and I'm on Awakening again. And I'm thinking and I'm considering my plans for the day. Well, as I do that, a really good idea is to think about what I might have done wrong yesterday and some instructions that I might have got as I slept to start today with new, and I start fresh. And I don't bring my problems from yesterday and magnify them in today, right? I'm trying to leave this stuff on a 24-hour cycle. It's not a perfect process because I'm imperfect, so I make mistakes. But if I do this on a day-to-day basis, that stuff that's lingering, it's not going to linger as much anymore. And the really cool part about this process is if I do these practices every single day and I start to notice the same thing coming up, right, every day, a couple days in a row, 4 or 5 times in a week, a couple weeks. What does that tell me? Maybe I need to take a deeper look at that. And what kind of spiritual practice do I have for that? 4th step comes to mind. Write some inventory about it. The same person's coming up. Same relationship, same things coming up day after day. And I can't seem to get rid of it. As much as I try in this 10th and 11th step practice, go back and do some inventory about it. The whole thing, all the way through, all 4 columns. See where my part is. Start working on that. Go through the relationship inventory. Start working on that. If I use all these tools on a day-to-day basis, and I'm willing to employ all of these spiritual principles in my life, there's not a problem in this world that I can't overcome with God's help in this book. It's been my experience. Now we can take a break. 10 minutes. All right. Just to get us gathered back, welcome back on Zoom as well. Just a quick moment of silence and the serenity prayer to get us grounded back here again. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Quick announcement for the people in the room specifically. This won't necessarily apply to Zoom, but we are doing the raffle at the end. I just want to remind everybody of that. I'm going to get us done right at the 4 o'clock mark, and then if you want to stay for the raffle 10 minutes or so after, we do have your numbers to call you, so it's totally optional, but we will be doing the raffle today after the meeting in the room. All right, so we left off, and as I mentioned about this 12th step, and I'm going to be focusing mainly on this chapter, chapter 7. A lot of good stuff in this chapter. And the Big Book doesn't use the word sponsorship, but this chapter is some pretty good instructions on what I might want to do to help carry this message to other alcoholics, as the 12th step says. So let's see what it says. Chapter 7. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Intensive is a really strong word. Intensive is not coming to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is fringe work with other alcoholics. That is socializing with other alcoholics. That is where I get introduced to the person I'm going to do the intensive work with. Intensive work with other alcoholics is a small group or one-on-one. What sponsorship is going to look like, right? So, again, that's very different than a meeting. And it works when other activities fail. So, I better be doing the other activities, right? If I'm thinking that sponsorship is going to be the reason that I'm staying sober and I'm going to use that as how I'm working the program or just carrying the message, well, what message am I going to be carrying if I'm not doing all these other activities, the first 11 steps that the book is telling me to do? What message am I really going to be carrying at that point? So I need to do those other activities. And as Bill Wilson describes in his story, and Dr. Bob talks about it too, until I find someone else to pass this on to, the cycle isn't complete. So yes, this is a huge part of it, and it is an enormous part of this program. There's 5 chapters about it. Chapter 7 through 11 are all about the 12th step. But the first 11 steps are vitally important, so I better be doing those other activities. And again, what message am I carrying if I'm not doing that? That's a scary thought. Might hear some of those messages in Alcoholics Anonymous. They're called opinions, and they can be very dangerous. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics, not my opinion, not my sponsor's message, right? Not some other Hazelden thing or whatever. The Big Book says carry this message, the message that I have received in the first 11 steps through page 88 of this book. Carry this message to other alcoholics. One solution. Talked about that a lot, especially in the first couple of weeks. One solution. Carry this message, not my message. This message. Ryan, you can help when no one else can. And that was certainly true in multiple ways for me, right? Like someone was able to help me when it felt like no one else could. Someone with this message. Because again, I heard some of the other messages in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I almost died trying to do some of that stuff. And then somebody came with this message and changed my whole view of this thing. And I've been doing that ever since. It says I can secure their confidence when others fail. It talks about that on page 18 as well. Not much is going to be accomplished in this program until I meet somebody with this message, right? Once I do, I can take up my bed and walk again. That's what the book says. It says it here again, right? Remember, they are very ill, so I need to realize who I'm approaching, or if they're approaching me. Either way, someone with untreated alcoholism is a very sick person. Keep that in mind. Sick people do sick things. Life will take on new meaning. It's a powerful promise. The book here in chapter 7 is going to really outline this very simple concept. Carrying the message is not an option in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Sponsorship is not an option if I'm going by what the big book says. Sponsorship is a requirement. Carrying the message is a requirement. And there's lots of people that feel, I just don't think I'm ready, I can't do it. Do you think anybody was ready when they carried the message the first time? I didn't know what the heck I was doing. First time I did it, even though I had the instructions from my sponsor, I was brand new at it. So of course, I might have made some mistakes. You think Bill and Bob knew what they were doing when they started carrying it to other people? Like, no, they had to figure it out, right? How am I ever going to figure it out if I don't do it? Not to mention, it's going to give me some powerful stuff here about what might happen if I don't do this. So carrying the message is not an option. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up around you, to have a host of friends, this is an experience you must not miss. Very powerful, powerful promise there. It has been my experience watching people recover in here, sitting across the table and seeing someone do a fist step and see the light come on in their eye, hearing about people's stories about their amends and their families being reassembled, watching someone who was hopeless and ready to die show up here with a smile on their face, right? Having a phone full of numbers of people that I can call if I'm struggling and I need help, right? Powerful stuff. Powerful, powerful stuff. That's what I get if I carry the message. It says, Ryan, we know you will not want to miss it. Now an important instruction, and this is for the people with a lot of time in here. Consider this one. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. I mentioned I have several mentors, and one of them makes a very strong suggestion that if I'm somebody with a lot of time and I haven't worked with somebody that's new in the program in a while, I'm missing out on something, right? You have a very powerful message that you can share with somebody who's brand new in this program. And while you may not relate in the sense that it's been so long since you've had a drink, you have the solution, right, to what they're dealing with. And we've all been there on our first day before. Everybody's had day one in AA. We all know what that's like. So frequent contact with newcomers. That also tells me consider the meetings that I'm going to. Is the meeting I'm going to every day, is there any newcomers there? Is it a bunch of old timers hanging out? And like those can be really great, don't get me wrong, but I better be going to some meetings where some new people are walking through the door. Right? We need that. This program dies without newcomers. Right? We don't get any new people, no cycle is going to continue in here. So it becomes a bright spot of my life. That has also been my experience. Perhaps you're not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. Okay, so I mentioned this before. Consider when the book was written. If you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover, that might be a really strong sign to participate in unity and get to a meeting. You're going to find a lot of us here that would like to recover, and that is not a good excuse in today's world, right? It says I can easily find them by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. So it gives me the instructions that were much more applicable back then. Now we still have all this stuff today, and this stuff still applies. Like, I own a sober living home, and one of the places that we go to look for people, not just in AA, is we go to the church and we ask the ministers and the priests in the area, like, hey, you got anybody that's really struggling, that's hanging around the church that might need some help, getting sober? So we do that there. It can happen here too, carrying the message. It says they will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. I should know that because I probably had some when I first got here, right? I know I did. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. So it applies that idea in the 9th step where we talked about tact, right? How am I making this approach, right? I'm not going to go in and guns a-blazing with these people and just try to shove my ideals down their throat. It's probably not the greatest course of action. I'm not saying it's 0% effective, but the odds are it's probably not very effective. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. There's an idea. Sentence that doesn't get talked a lot about in the book. Ministers and doctors are really competent people, Ryan. You might be able to learn a lot from them if I wish. But it happens that because of my own drinking experience, I can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. The big book talked about on page 18, back in step 1, about the idea that I can gain the confidence of an alcoholic who otherwise probably wasn't willing to tell the truth to anybody. But an ex-problem drinker with whom the problem has been solved can genuinely win my confidence in a matter of hours. In my case, it took 5 minutes of my sponsor talking to me to win my confidence because I could tell there was something about him that was just different than anything I'd ever heard before. And that's the kind of stuff that can happen in here. So cooperate, never criticize. There's a good instruction for life, not just sponsorship, right? There's an idea. To be helpful is my only aim. Okay, as we go through this chapter, a couple things I want to point out specifically. One, the book is really going to hammer home on all the stuff that we've talked about. So again, if I'm really carrying this message, I'm using all the stuff that the book has told me up to this point. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to give me some specific instructions about the timing of this and the approach behind it, right? And some ideas about how I go about carrying this message. And this is based on the first 100, who again, like if I'm sitting here saying like, I don't feel like I can sponsor, I don't feel like I'm ready to do it. Well, how about this? Here are the instructions on how to do it, and just follow this and see what happens. Don't go with what I think is the best idea. If I'm really unsure about it, especially, here's a great set of instructions to follow. So let's see what it says. When I discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all I can about him. So that's interesting, right? I don't just go over there and tell him what he needs to do. Anybody ever experienced that? That's called playing God. And in step 3, I agreed I wasn't going to do that because it didn't work. So instead, maybe go ask this new person, how you doing? What's going on? How'd you end up here today? Does anyone ever bother to tell you anything about what's going on in this room? Do you know where the coffee is? Like, do you know it's free? The bathroom is working and you can use it? Just find out about this person. See what's going on with them. Is this your first time here? You've been here 25 times. All right? Because there's people that have been around these rooms for a long time and no one's really ever explained to them what's really going on here. Imagine that. Sad. That's true. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste your time trying to persuade him. That's another instruction you're going to hear a lot in this chapter, right? Unless I really want to stop and I have a desire to stop, my experience is no one's going to be able to persuade me. No frothy emotional appeal is going to work for me, right? It has to come from within, right? On page 42, Fred talked about in his story when they came to him that last time, they asked him if he was done. Right? Was he done? Did he consider himself an alcoholic, and was he done? Right? I got to be done. Am I done? It's a very real thing. Because if they're not done, they're going to take some more opportunities to try to get done, and that could be dangerous. But it's part of the deal. It says I may spoil a later opportunity. So if I'm trying to persuade someone that doesn't really want this, I could spoil an opportunity for down the road when they actually do. Now they're not going to come to me. It's an interesting idea. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. Again, you got to consider when the book was written, we don't really see the families around here a lot anymore. Maybe you run into them at some point, but it's going to give a lot of instructions about some family stuff, and you got to consider when the book was written, and odds are we're probably not going to have a lot of contact with their family, but if we do, the book has instructions for that too. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. So again, the book's going to go through some of these instructions. I am going to skip down a couple paragraphs because it's going to talk about letting him go out on a binge if he's not ready. One more time, in the last paragraph on this page, it tells me that instruction I told you is going to be carried throughout the book, or this chapter specifically. If he does not want to see you, Ryan, never force yourself upon him. Right? Now, skip a couple sentences and we get this instruction that's so powerful. And if you ever come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with me, there's a couple of things you're going to see besides me. You're going to see this book sitting next to me on the table at every single meeting that I go to, without fail. I do not come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous without this book. And the reason why is this instruction on page 90. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. This is for the newcomer. So when they come in here, they can see, if they've never seen before, what this book is. An old guy that passed away in Scottsdale suggested that to me, and he pointed that out in the book to me. His name was Jim. If you've ever been to meetings at the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club, he had over 50 years, and he had an oxygen machine he carried around. Really cool guy. Misunderstood, but a really cool guy. And he said for me to never come to a meeting without a big book. So I've taken that instruction, and then when you come to a meeting with me, I'll be here with my book always. I'm going to place it on the table so the newcomer can see it when they walk in. Page 91. I'm going to skip the first 2 paragraphs on 91, and I'm going to talk about something really quick. From 91, this paragraph in the middle of the page that says, see your man alone if possible, it's going to talk about the first visit, right, with this person. That I find this prospect, they want to stop, they want to hear what I have to say. So the first instruction is the first time I meet with them, I see them alone if possible. Until I get to page 96, everything from 91 to this paragraph on 96 that says second visit is what I'm supposed to do on the first visit. So there's a lot of stuff from 91 to 96 that the book is going to tell me to do on the very first time that I sit down with this person alone, right? I've made the introduction at the meeting. We agree to meet sometime. If any of you have ever done this before, I set aside some time. For me, it's usually an hour to 2 hours. I find like anything more than that is probably a lot, and they're not going to be able to retain very much. Anything less, I'm likely not going to be able to get done most of what this book is going to tell me to do from 91 to 96. But consider that. It's a really interesting instruction, and there's a lot from 91 to 96 the book's going to talk about. So it says, see your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. So find out about him, just like it said on the previous page. Find out about this person. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experience. So I share my experience with him. Experience, strength, and hope, right? I share my experience with him. To encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. Some sponsors might want to really highlight that, right? I'm not here. Let the person talk. Maybe even as the person who has the solution, I need to listen. Imagine that. That's a humbling thing. I need to listen to what this new person has to say. It might be a little crazy. Like it gets wild sometimes, but I need to listen. I'm not God. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed, right? So that's a really good thing. So by listening to them, I might find out if they've tried this 8 times before and failed. This is their first time here ever, right? If they're dealing with some really heavy stuff outside the rooms, like are they in a treatment house? Like all this different. So there's an infinite amount of stuff that I can find out about this person, but the only way I'm going to find out about it is if I listen. Another really, this is an experience-based thing that I generally tend to ask is I ask them how they learn. If I'm presenting this information to people, I can't change the way people learn, but I can certainly change the way that I present the information. Now, what does that mean? Some people learn auditorily, like they need to have the book read to them. Like they struggle with reading, right? They need to hear it and have someone read it to them. So those people I read the book. Some people learn visually, right? So they got to see it. They got to have handouts like this and like see things visually. Some people learn through experience, right? So they need to kind of experience it and see it in action. There's also different ways that people learn. And if I'm really going to be effective with this, my experience over time has shown, like, again, Ryan, what can you do better? Well, what I can do better is not treat everybody like they all learn the same way. I could be sitting there trying to give this information to someone and they're not getting any of it. And again, I'm not God and I can't keep them sober, but I can certainly do my best to try to help them. And I find out, like, how do you learn? How do you learn? What do you do? You know, how do you learn? It says, if he's not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. Definitely highlight that, right? Not here to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades, get him to tell some of his. Breaking the ice, right? Making this a two-way channel of communication. It's a really powerful instruction. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. What we suggest you do this as we have done in the chapter on alcoholism. Well, there you go. So I am supposed to present to him everything that I learned on the chapter about alcoholism, or everything up to that point too, right? The first step. It's telling me to present the first step to him, right? So he understands what's going on here. The mental twist, the obsession, the inability to leave it alone no matter how great the necessity or wish, my inability to control it once I start, things like that. Present that information to him and see if, kind of like how I did with you guys today here in the first step in this workshop, does this relate to you? Like if I were to ask you this question, how would you answer it, right? You ever had somewhere to be and then started drinking before you had to be there and then didn't show up there? Right? You ever went out with the idea I'm going to have a couple drinks and had a lot more than that? It's a pretty good sign. I suggest you do this. We've done the chapter on alcoholism. If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. Like the eyes will open. Some of the stuff I'm saying, they're going to, whoa, how do you know that about me? Like, how do you know that? That's what I used to do with my sponsor. I would look at him and be like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that about me? All right? And he didn't know, but if I'm like him, I'm going to have a lot of similarities. There's going to be stuff like only alcoholics are going to understand. Normal people, what's this guy talking about? If I have somewhere to be, I never start drinking before. What do you mean? That would be stupid. Why would I do something like that? That would be insane. Who would do that? He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. Now, if I'm satisfied he is a real alcoholic, consider what the book says about the alcoholic. It defines it twice. The real alcoholic on page 20 and 21, right? The inability to control, right? If I have a sufficient reason, I can't stop or moderate on my own, that makes me a real alcoholic. The big book also talks about a definition of an alcoholic that has absolutely nothing to do with drinking, and it says I'm self-will run riot, and I usually don't think so. I'm an extreme example of self-will, and I usually don't think so. That's on page 62. So consider that as a question. So what's funny is the second half of that definition is I don't think so. So if I ask somebody that's new, I was like, do you think self-will is your problem? The answer I'm most likely going to get is, what are you talking about? Right? Because they don't think so. Perfect. Right where they need to be. Like that idea of me understanding what an alcoholic is, if I listen to some of their stories, I'm going to hear that self-will run riot in there, right? It's not just about drinking. It's really not just about drinking. Begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Powerful sentence, right? The hopeless feature of the malady. That means lack of power is my dilemma. All right? Not lack of inability to quit drinking. It's lack of power is my dilemma. That's the malady. I don't have any power. If I could have stopped drinking on my own, I would have done it a long time ago. A, it wouldn't be around. Detox and I'm good. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental conditions surrounding that first drink presents normal functioning of the willpower. Again, it's telling me to go back through the beginning of the book, not necessarily using the book, but sharing my experience with what I learned about myself in the first step and see if that relates to that. This is all in the first visit, by the way. We're only on page 92. We got 3 more pages to go on the first visit. It says, I'm going to skip down to the next paragraph. Again, just in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of go through some of this a little quickly, but it's up to you to read the rest and fill in the blanks. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness. Listen to this instruction. A fatal malady. First visit. And I'm going to talk to this person about my experience, drunk and sober, about how deadly this is, how serious this is, right? The idea is to not screw around because the book's going to tell me to get right into the work with them immediately. And the only way they're going to be willing to do that was with the proper motivation, right? And the proper motivation would be, do I think I'm going to die from this? Like if I'm hearing what this guy's telling me and this sounds like me, that could be pretty serious. Might not have tomorrow or, wait another week until my treatment center brings me back to this meeting. Maybe I'm going to call you tomorrow and I'm going to get serious about this. And not everybody does. Like if anyone's been through this, not everyone's ready for that. But the ones who are, and some people only got days in here, man. I can't stress that enough. Like I've seen it too many times. Some people only got days. We always think like if people got all this time to figure this out, it's not true. Some people got days. Like they're going to AMA from that treatment center and they could be dead on the street in a couple days. And maybe I have a chance to help them, maybe I don't. But if I'm not willing to take that chance, then I'm not doing my part. It's just my experience. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on my personal experience. So I'm here to share my experience with him, right? My experience with my disease, my experience with this solution in this book, right? I'm not here to share opinions about that. I'm here to share my experience. And I'm not here to tell him what he needs to do. That's another part. My sponsor helped me with that a lot. He said, Ryan, he stopped me when I was sharing one day at a meeting. And he said, have you ever considered sharing without the words you and we in it? Right? Because you don't know what those people are going through, Ryan. They may not be having the same experience as you. You have your own experience. Keep your shares to I and me. Kind of like how I read the book. Until I've done the work, the we is everybody else. I'm part of the we once I do the work. Keep this attention focused mainly on the most. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. It's a powerful instruction. All right. Skip down to the bottom of the page. The last sentence on the page says, even though your protege may have not entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well, right? So I'm telling him the stories about how I was ready to die when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, or all this stuff that happened to me when I was drinking. And now I'm sitting here and hopefully I look like I've gotten well to this person. If not, then I might need to do some look in the mirror and work on that. Let him ask you that question, if you will. Powerful instruction, italicized text, neon sign. Tell him exactly what happened to you. So in my case, exactly what happened to me is I sat around Alcoholics Anonymous for 30 days thinking I could just show up here and everything would be fine. And until I started doing the work in this book, I was ready to die in Alcoholics Anonymous. Once I started to do the work in this book, I got hope. That's exactly what happened to me. I'm not saying that has to be exactly what happened to you, but that's what I'm telling the person that I'm working with. That's new. Stress the spiritual feature freely. So don't be afraid to talk about the God of my understanding, is what that just said. Right? The spiritual solution. Like, I always laugh when people say, like, oh, we don't want to scare the newcomer away talking about God and the meaning. To which I would say, well, what are we going to talk about? A lie? Well, what solution do we have if it's not spiritual? So I'm gonna tell them to do a lot of other stuff that's not going to help them? I mean, that's a dangerous game to play. That's playing God as well. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with my conception of God. First visit. First visit, I'm talking about God, talking about spiritual solution, and I'm introducing the concept in the second step that the big book has talked about, right? I'm bringing this up to him. Hey, just because I say God doesn't mean you got to believe in whatever I believe in, right? My sponsor asked me on the first visit, Ryan, are you willing to get on your knees and ask a power greater than yourself to keep you clean and sober today? And I said, absolutely not. And it's just it's the truth. I'm telling you exactly what happened to me, right? And so he suggested that until I did that, not much was going to be accomplished for me. And so he said, even if you feel like you're talking to the wall, even if you feel like it doesn't make sense or it doesn't, it's meaningless, do it anyway. The book's going to say that too, right? Do it anyway. And he said, he actually gave me an ultimatum, and he said, I can't work with you unless you're willing to do that. And that was just him, man. It's what the book says. So it says he can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. So I could share my experience doing that with this person on the first visit. I said, until I was willing to believe in a power greater than myself and live by spiritual principles, nothing was accomplished for me in Alcoholics Anonymous. That is my experience. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. So it's telling me to use tact, right? Again, be smart about how I approach this. I'm not telling him, just use an example, right? This is just an example. I'm not going to come to him with Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, right? I'm going to come to him with what the book says, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, right? God of your understanding, those types of things, until I find out about this person. And then if we have a similar idea of what God is, maybe we have a deeper connection with that. But be smart about this. There's no use in arousing prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. I want to open the book, not close it. So how do I open it for this person? Again, maybe if I listen and learn about him a little bit, I can find out. It's a really good question to ask too, right off the bat. Are you a religious person? Right? Are you a religious person? It's a very simple question, pretty innocent question. Not a requirement to be a religious person to do this, but it's interesting to know if they are. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. Now, this is an exercise in humility for a sponsor, this next paragraph. Really important one. And I've had to learn this one many times over. It says, your prospect, Ryan, may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. How'd that happen? Many times. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. Maybe I share that part of Bill's story with him. Kind of that idea of what faith without works is dead, right? Without that work and self-sacrifice for others, the faith alone is not going to be enough. It's an interesting idea. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Let him see that I'm not really there to instruct him at all. Right? Not instruct him in religion. I'm not here to tell you what you're supposed to do. I'm here to share with you what I've done, the results that I have, You do with that what you wish. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do. There's the exercise in humility. This person, on the first visit, maybe I can admit that they know more about certain things than I do in life. That's humility, right? Am I willing to concede that, to try to help somebody else? But call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Perhaps you're, right? So how's that religious faith been working out for you? You're still here in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Maybe there's some stuff in this book and some stuff that I've learned over the time that I've been here that I can help you with to add, not subtract to your faith, to add to it. It says, we represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing with general principles common to most denominations. Now, on the first visit, I'm going to continue to say that because it hasn't got to the second visit yet. On the first visit, I outlined the program of action, explaining how I made a self-appraisal, how I straightened out my past, how I'm now endeavoring to be helpful, right? It is important for him to realize that my attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital role in my own recovery. Actually, he may be helping me more than I'm helping him. First visit. Powerful instruction. Outline the program. Tell him what I did. Here's what I did, man. I tell him on the first visit, if we're going to work together, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go from the title page, page 164. I'm going to do everything the big book has asked me to do. I'm going to tell him that I've done that. And tell him that it's changed my life. And tell him that it has provided hope where I was once hopeless. And that's all I'm asking him to do. I'm not asking him to do anything that I haven't done. Make that very clear. And you know that by doing that, he's actually helping me more than I'm helping him. And they'll not understand that right away, but hopefully they will when they start to carry the message to someone else, right? I might outline that expectation as well, because that's part of outlining the program. So the idea is that once you get this, you help others, just like I'm helping you right now. That's how this whole thing works. My sponsor made sponsorship not an option on day one. He told me he's like, Ryan, if you work these steps, there's a really good chance that it could help you with a lot of things in your life. But he said the real miracle won't happen until you start carrying this message to other alcoholics in the program. I thought this guy was crazy. It's like, do you understand how messed up I am right now? Like, the miracle is going to be if I show up here tomorrow. And, which was, but the biggest miracle happened when I started to carry this message to other alcoholics. Make it plain he's under no obligation to me, that my hope is only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. So there you go, there's that instruction. So just how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he's not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. So again, I'm not playing God. I'm not telling him what he needs to do. I'm not telling him where he needs to be. I'm saying, I'm going to be here at this time. If you'd like to work with me, awesome. If you're not here, chances are we're not going to be working together. But again, you're under no obligation. Right? If you want to be there, be there. I'm going to be there regardless. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off. Humility. For he has helped you more than you have helped him, right? You're going to hear this all the time. Like, I stayed sober. This person's helping me out greatly. Like, I'm doing my best to try to carry the message. I'm trying to fulfill this 12-step. They're helping me so much more than I'm ever going to be able to help them. And it's such a vital part of the process. It says, if my talk has been, listen to these instructions. These are powerful for when I'm dealing with new people. I need to be sane, quiet, so I'm not yelling at them like a lunatic, and full of human understanding. Wow, meet them where they're at. Perhaps made a friend. That's cool. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. There's that paradox in AA. AA is full of paradoxes. The book's full of paradoxes, right? The more hopeless I am, the more hope I might actually have. Imagine that, because that's where that gift of desperation comes from. He will be more likely to follow my suggestions. I love this next one. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all of the program. I'm one of those candidates. I looked at those steps and I was like, yeah, I don't know about all that, dude. But I may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires discussion with other people. Absolutely. I do not contradict such views. Listen to this. This is cool because this is what I get to do now. Tell him you once felt as he does. Hey, I felt that way. I didn't want to do all this either. But I doubt whether I would have made such progress had I not taken action. Right? I didn't want to do it, but by doing it, my life changed. It's a powerful message, right? Did a lot of things I didn't want to do, working the steps and going through this book. On my first visit, I tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, I lend him this copy of this book. So up to this point, I've been describing my experience using this book in my life. I've been describing my experience drinking. Now, if I'm seeing that he's engaged and interested, really wants this, is really... Now we're going to talk about the book. Here's the book. Let's get into the work. Visit 1. Again, remember, first visit. Bless you, Mike. Now, it says, unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. So again, do they want this or not? Do they want this or not? Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so, so sometimes a mistake. So this is the one that wants to go make some amends right away, right? We're talking about the problem. He's like, oh, amends sounds good. I'm going to go do that. It's like, oh, we're gonna take this. We're going to go through the book in order. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he's likely to say you rushed him, right? So again, I'm not trying to shove the whole thing down their throat. I'm outlining this program of action. We're going to start at step 1. I'm not asking them to go, make inventory and do amends on the first visit, right? But I am going to present this program, and it says, if I try to force my idea of it on him too much, this person could come back and blame me later, which is unfortunate, but it happens. It says it will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. That's also on page 18. Right? About the instructions for what to look for in a sponsor. And then huge instruction. This is my job. This is all I'm supposed to do. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Here's what I did. Here's the results that I got. Well, first, here's how I was. Here's what I did. Here's the results that I got. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? You going to pick up this kit of spiritual tools or not? Simple. Show him how they worked with me, right? So I show this person how this stuff worked with me. I'm going to explain to him or her, whatever, and I'm going to explain to them, this is what I did. This is how this worked. It may not make sense right now, but it didn't make sense to me either, but this is how it worked. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him if he wants to get well, you'll do anything to help. I'm just here to be helpful. Even if you don't want to work the steps with me, here's my number. Give me a call when you are ready. Give me a call anyway, right? You see me at a meeting? I'll help you out. You need a ride? I'll help you out, right? We're going to get some instructions later about maybe not giving them money and shelter. It seems that's a little different. I'm willing to help you. The book's going to give me some caution points here. We'll get into that in the next page or so. It says, if he's not interested in my solution, if he expects you to only act as a banker for his financial difficulties or a nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. So that's someone who's not willing to do this, right? So again, if they're not willing to do this, I'll get to page 96, and I love that page. We'll talk about that. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. Big instruction. Read the book in the interval. Some people interpret that as read the entire book in the interval between visits 1 and 2. There are people out there doing that. To me, read this book means read from this book, so I give them something to read. Generally, this is just me. This is just the practice that was shown to me. Again, this can be interpreted a few ways, right? I have them read the doctor's opinion and Bill's story between visits 1 and 2, and then we talk about it, right? And that also tells me, are they willing to do it, right? And visits 1 and 2 is a pretty short gap. We're not going to be talking about weeks here in between. But I have them read some stuff from this book and see if they're willing to do that on their own, and then we talk about it. Anyway, just a thought with that one. It's powerful instruction, though. Read the book in the interval. After doing that, he must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. So if this program is going to work and these steps are going to work, the desire has to come from within. If I'm going to find God, it has to come from within. The willingness has to come from me. It cannot be manifested by someone else. No human power is going to be able to provide that for me. God is going to have to reveal himself from within. The steps and all this transformational process is going to have to be an inside job. No one's going to be able to work the steps for me. Page 96. I love this paragraph. I can't even tell you how many times I sent people to this page and they call me, I got drunk again, I don't know what to do. I can't do it right. It's not working. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another and try again. Imagine that. Alcoholics get drunk. It's what we do. It's not supposed to be like that surprising, And not everybody wants this here. So do not be discouraged. Search out another and try again, Ryan. You're sure to find some desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Big instruction. It's so cool when this happens. When you sit down with that person and they are just on fire and they want it. You can just see it. You can feel it. You can hear it in what they say, and like their eyes, they're just engaged. They want this. Now, I'm not saying everybody I've ever worked with is like that, and I have plenty of people in my sponsorship family that are sober today that maybe didn't want it as much as some others. But man, when you find this one that's eager, that's gold. That's magic. That's that experience you definitely don't want to miss. That person might stick around with you for a while. My business partner in my sober living is one of my first sponsees from years ago. He's got a little over 5 years now. And it's really cool to watch what's going on in his life. He just had a baby, and he's doing really well for himself. It says, I find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. Right? They just told me in plain English, don't chase these people around. They ain't calling you back. You know, if they're not showing up for these meetings that we set, you know, don't chase them. Don't chase them. Why? If I leave such a person alone, they may soon be convinced that they cannot recover by themselves. So maybe they need to learn that. Even bigger instruction, and this one's huge, to spend too much time on any one situation is to deny another alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. So by chasing the one around that doesn't want it, I'm depriving who knows how many others of the chance to be helpful to them. It's an interesting idea. Then it gives an example, a practical example. One of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half dozen prospects. This was me as well, by the way. Hand to God. First 5 people. When my sponsor suggested that I raise my hand and make myself available to be a sponsor in this program, he didn't tell me to put it down either. So I got a bunch of guys all at once, and I didn't really know what to do. I got overwhelmed. I had 10 guys in treatment at the same time, right? Don't recommend that. Really bad idea. Had to learn my limitations, right? But anyway, I was going around trying to help him, anyway, like this experience didn't work out so well the first half dozen or so that I was trying. And that was my learning and growing experience, my growing pains, my humility, learning to be humble in this. Anyway, as this says, I often say that if I had continued to work on them, I might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. So I've had a lot of success since then. I certainly have had failures too, but don't be discouraged. Again, like if I'm scared of this and I don't want to do it and I don't think I'm prepared, if I have the message in this book, I am prepared. I have the instructions in this chapter on how to proceed and approach it. Right? I'm depriving myself and others of the chance to fully recover if I don't do this. Like this is a big part of the program. Now we finally get to the second visit. That was a lot, right? First visit. A lot of stuff. Again, what does the big book say? Might hear a lot of stuff in meetings. You know, do this, don't do that. Be careful. That's all I'm going to say. Just be careful. The big book's been working for a really long time. This is what Dr. Bob did with thousands of alcoholics on their first visit. Right? He had a pretty good success rate. Suppose now that you're making a second visit, he's read this volume and says he's prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery, right? So he's willing to do the work. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision to tell his story, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. So that's kind of setting up the fifth step, essentially. He may be broke or homeless. If he is, you might try to help him getting a job or give him a little financial assistance with discretion. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days, but be sure you use discretion. Now again, consider when the book was written. We have lots of places to send these people now. I don't need to bring them into my home. And the next page is going to tell me about some stuff that might happen if I do. But again, it just depends on the situation. We got treatment, we got sober livings, we got detox facilities, we got all these places we can send these guys and women now. And it's a beautiful thing that we have. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we have. But I can help them, right? So what I do with someone that's new is I don't invite them into my home, quite frankly. But I will absolutely help them get into like a rehab facility or do my best to try. I'll give them some recommendations. I'll help them get into detox, right? I'll help them find a sober living. Give them a list of places they can call. Like that's something I can certainly do to help. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family. I'm going to skip the rest of this because it's going to talk about bringing this person to your home. And again, you can do that if you want. Discretion. Keep that in mind. It says never avoid these responsibilities, the responsibilities of helping a newcomer or someone new to this program, right? Be sure you're doing the right thing if you assume them. What are my motives? What are my motives, right? Am I helping this person because I think that if I do this, it'll make up for all the work I'm not doing on myself? That's dangerous, right? Be sure I'm doing the right thing if I assume taking on someone to help them in this program, right? Helping others is the foundation stone of my recovery. Another stone, right? We talked about some stones before, steps 2 and 3. The foundation stone of my recovery is helping others. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. Powerful instruction. That's for someone who says, I'm coming to the meetings and I'm fulfilling the 12th step by making coffee. It's a beautiful thing. It's a really nice act of service that I can do. But that's a kindly act once in a while. The big book says I'm going to need to go a little bit farther than that. You have to act the Good Samaritan every day, Ryan, if need be. It may mean the loss of night's sleep, interference with my pleasures, interruptions to my business. It may mean sharing my money, my home, my counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. A lot of stuff there. It's kind of outlining all kinds of stuff I might have to do in this 12-step work, right? Outside of taking them into my home, which actually I have let a couple of Swansea stay at my house for a little while, ones that I've worked with for a while, I have let that happen. But outside of that, everything on that list I've done at some point with God's help in this program, working with other people. My telephone may jingle at any time of the day or night. One thing I do, and this is just me because I have a schedule and I'm available for emergencies at night, but I let people know on the second visit or even the first visit, like, hey, usually between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. I sleep. Unless it's an emergency. If you want the best version of me tomorrow when you probably really need my help, like I said, from 3 a.m. to 9 p.m., I'll be there. If I'm not previously engaged with something else, I'll be there. But I kind of let them know, phone jingling all throughout the night. Again, it's available. Like, I got that call about my dad in the middle of the night, right? Like, that stuff happens. Emergencies happen. It says, my wife may sometimes say she is neglected, a drunk. Now, here's why I don't take them into my homes and I send them to treatment. So they don't smash up my furniture or burn my mattresses, right? Let them do that at treatment. Like, go do it. Insurance is covering it anyway, so it'll be fine. You may have to fight with him if he is... Hopefully not. Sometimes you'll have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his discretion. Okay. All right. Again, let's talk about when the book was written, right? A lot of remote areas. Not a hospital in every corner. Not an urgent care. Like, shouldn't have to be doing that in today's world, right? This is a time frame change. But what that could be interpreted is like, maybe I have a sponsee who has maybe a procedure and they have some pain pills that they're given. And I'm the one that's going to regulate those pain pills for them, right? Maybe I've done that for a family member that's an alcoholic or someone that I'm in a relationship with. That's how that could be interpreted in today's world, is I could manage a prescription that's already given by a doctor to someone who can't manage it on their own, like me. Right? Another time, I may have to send for the police or ambulance. Occasionally, you'll have to meet such conditions. So again, like, especially the ambulance one, man, if they're really like going through DTs and withdrawals, like, I better be careful and probably get them some medical attention. All right. Got a few minutes left. I just want to talk about a couple things on these next few pages and just give you some general ideas about this. On page 98, very powerful paragraphs here. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. That's dangerous. Call me every day. You got to call me every day, sponsee. Okay. Doesn't say that in here. And that is them putting their reliance upon me and not upon God. How about maybe you should pray every day? Call me if you have a problem, right? Call me if you need some help. Call me if you need someone to talk to. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. That's going to happen all the time. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Truth is true. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. That includes me as the sponsor. Their dependence needs to be upon God, not on me. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts God and clean house. All right, then we skip. The next paragraph says now the domestic problem, but I'm going to skip to page 99, the last paragraph, because again, this idea of I need this if I'm going to be sober, like the domestic problem is a huge one, right? Last paragraph on 99 says, let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. God, I just need to get my kids back. Just need my wife to take me back, and then I'll get this, right? Dangerous. No, you don't. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. People includes me as the sponsor. His sobriety is not dependent on his relationship with me. His sobriety is dependent upon his relationship with God. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We've seen others slip when the family came back too soon. And I'm going to leave you with this. Both you and the new man will walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Again, if you're in the room, we're going to have the raffle, so hang out with us. If you guys want any of this information, including the recordings on every one of these packets, is my number and my email. Text me, email me. I have all the recordings. I have all the packets. I have everything. The YouTube channel will be complete after this fourth session, and there'll be a collection of them in one YouTube package, so you'll be able to access it all. Thanks again. I really appreciate all of you, and we'll turn it over to Patty.